Good morning, welcome to Breakfast. You're with Charlie State and Naga Munchetty.
Our headlines today, among those calling for the government to relax the 2-metre social distancing rule in England in order to kick-start the economy.
Meanwhile, for the first time since lockdown began 11 weeks ago, millions of people living alone in England will be allowed to stay overnight in another person's household. The new measure, described by the Prime Minister as a support bubble, comes into effect on Saturday. We can talk to our political... Good to see you. Good morning. More questions are going to be raised, aren't they, with how all of this is going to work. Should we start with social distancing, how the restrictions perhaps could be eased? Indeed. And Jessica, we were talking as well about the bubble. Single people, single parents, those who are living alone, are now going to see a change to their lives from Saturday. President Trump has said he won't strip the names of pro-slavery generals from US military bases, despite growing pressure to do so.
It comes amid continued anti-racism protests following the death of George Floyd. Let's speak to our North American.
NHS England says it's offering innovative and more convenient cancer care during the coronavirus pandemic, despite figures released later today, which are expected to reveal a decline in the number of urgent referrals in April.
Charities are calling for a national plan to restore services and warn of a ticking time bomb in undiagnosed cases. Our health correspondent, Nora Moss, reports. J.K. Rowling has revealed how she experienced domestic abuse and sexual assault in an essay defending her comments on transgender issues.
Now, this comes after she was accused of transphobia following a series of controversial tweets. In a blog post, the Harry Potter author said incidents in her past had shaped her opinions on the need to protect girls. We should warn you, Nick Beake's report does contain some flashing images. The Duchess of Cambridge is urging people to document their lockdown experiences through photography as part of a project she's launched with the National Portrait Gallery.
There's 1 week left for people to submit their pictures, and 100 of the best will feature in an online exhibition on the gallery website. Our royal correspondent Daniela Relf has been looking at some of the entries so far. Now, in the wake of the death of George Floyd, the question being asked by many young people is what might change?
Well, hundreds of thousands of people have marched in protest. Statues have been torn down or removed or have been discussed about being removed. And there are some controversial television programmes and films which have been called into question.
Breakfast's Graham Satchell has been speaking to a group of teenagers about their hopes for the future.
Interesting getting those people's thoughts, isn't it? And how they're that generation. Is it going to change in time for them? Because there were generations before who were hoping we'd never be here now.
Yeah, a lot of questions.
17 minutes past 6 is the time. Let's look at the front pages for you. I'm thinking about social distancing, and it's quite interesting seeing how TV's made. Obviously, we're social distancing. We have been for a while now. And I was just looking, lots of the papers have picked up that Coronation Street is going to start filming again. And it's taking a look at how this is actually going to work. And this is in the Daily... It's interesting how the Daily Mirror has picked up as well, later on as well. But it's just always interesting seeing behind the scenes, because people miss their regular viewing,
I wonder how it will affect the scripting, whether the scripting will... You know, they're trying not to do so many of the intimate... The sort of scenes where they're sort of discussions or arguments or moments.
That's the whole thing. They were saying that kissing scenes, so they can't have those kissing scenes, so they're going to have those verbal, you know, that allude to what's happening or about to happen, and that will be enough.
So I'm staying on the sort of medical theme, and maybe there's a slight word of caution around this one, but who's not interested in a headline like this? Patient stuffs olive.
Eating the olives.
No.
I thought
so
she was eating the
she's
olives.
preparing, because what she does normally, she does prepare a lot of food. So the thing she wanted to do to keep on track was to carry on working. Yes, I know the questions you're asking, and I will answer all of these questions. Okay. Specifically, doing that would have been a bit tricky. And so, yeah.
Green or black?
OK.
You said you'd answer my questions.
I will, if you give me a moment here. So here we go. It's olive oscolane, and they're olives stuffed with mincemeat and covered with breadcrumbs and then deep fried. We don't know the colour of the olives, but there you go. So she was, whilst they're operating on her brain, she's actually carrying on the business of preparing olives.
I've never eaten those olives. They sound quite lovely. Well done. I hope she recovered fine,
yes,
did she?
all well. So it's a good story. 6:21 is the time now.
Coronavirus testing for those living and working in care homes for the elderly in England has provided some reassurance for thousands of families who can't be with their loved ones.
Our social affairs correspondent Fiona Lambdin has been speaking to a family from Bristol who've had an anxious wait for their results. Now, many of us have missed seeing family, of course, since lockdown, but imagine being separated from your child before you've even met.
71 days after their baby son Manu was born to a surrogate mother 8,000 miles away in Ukraine, an Argentinian couple, Flavia and Jose, have now made it to Kiev to bring home their son. Jonah Fisher was there to capture that moment. Our family reunited at last, 71 days. It is time to talk to Matt, find out what's happening with her. Hey, it's blowy outside. Morning.
Hey, Matt, thank you.
Matt, thanks. You are watching Breakfast with Charlie and Naga. The time now is 6:31.
We'll bring you all the latest news and sport in a few minutes' time. Also,
Bring you a summary of today's main stories from BBC News. Former cabinet members are among those calling for the government to relax the 2-metre social distancing rule in England in order to kickstart the economy. Meanwhile, single parents and people living alone in England will be able to stay overnight at one another's households as part of a further easing of coronavirus restrictions.
time now is 6:33.
That means it's time for our daily GP appointment. Dr. Saima Iqbal joins us.
Let's see, time now is 6:40. That means it's time to have a chat with Mike. Good to see you this morning, Mike. I'm thinking a couple of things. Boxing, like lots of other sports, has been struggling with, how and when it will get back. But for once in a way, we're talking about which... well, I get myself in a pickle here, aren't we? About a fight, a plan for a fight around which there is a great deal of excitement. Who knows when?
Rory McIlroy and Colin Jackson follow on from Steve Bunt because his energy is just off the scale.
He blows us away every
occasion. He's absolutely emphatic, even when he's saying he doesn't know.
Yes.
I mean, that's quite a trick, isn't it?
Yes.
That is quite a trick. Good to hear from him. Nice to see you, Mike. We'll chat later on.
13 minutes to 7 is the time. British Airways staff have told this programme that the company is being callous and brutal in its negotiations on their future jobs.
Let's get a bit more from Sean, who's been looking into it for us. So, Sean, there's been quite a lot talked about in relation to British Airways and their plans and the worries staff have. Tell us more. So now you know how they're adapting. It's just a bit of space.
New world. Try something new all the time. Don't know if it's going to be... particularly new weather today. Matt, morning, but it's going to feel fresh because it's just blowing a hoolie out there.
It is indeed. Quite windy for the next...
Good morning, welcome to Breakfast with Charlie States and Naga Munchetty.
Our headlines today. Good morning, it's Thursday, the 11th of June. Our top story this morning. Former cabinet members are among those calling for the government to relax the 2-metre social distancing rule in England in order to kick-start the economy.
Meanwhile, for the first time since lockdown began 11 weeks ago, millions of people living alone in England will be allowed to stay overnight in another person's household.
The new measure, described by the Prime Minister as a support bubble, comes into effect on Saturday. Let's talk to our political... Thank you very much. Worth saying as well, Government Minister this morning speaking to us at 7:30 is Simon Clarke. If you've got specific situations or are a little confused over any of the bubble particularly, or maybe over the 2-metre distancing as well, do let us know your thoughts this morning and we'll try and deal with some of those for you.
The government's latest daily figures show that there have been a further 245 deaths from coronavirus across the UK.
President Trump has said he won't strip the names of pro-slavery generals from US military bases, despite growing pressure to do so.
It comes amid continued anti-racism protests following the death of George Floyd. Our North American correspondent David Willis has more. The statue of slave trader Edward Colston has been recovered from Bristol Harbour earlier this morning. J.K. Rowling has revealed how she experienced domestic abuse and sexual assault in an essay, a piece of writing defending her comments on transgender issues. This comes after she was accused of transphobia following a series of controversial tweets.
In a blog post, the Harry Potter author said incidents in her past had shaped her opinions on the need to protect girls. Nick Beake's report contains some flashing images.
Time now is 10 minutes past 7. The toppling of the statue of slave trader Edward Colston on Sunday has sparked a widespread debate about whether it's appropriate to mark the lives of colonial leaders.
Well, in Poole, a statue of Robert Baden-Powell, who founded the Scout movement, is to be taken down today. We're joined now by...
We can talk to the historian, Professor David Olusegun.
These themes here, and we were talking a moment ago, weren't we, about Robert Baden-Powell as well, a statue being taken down in Poole, as questions are asked about some of his values. It feels like something very important is happening at the moment. Do you think it is significant and important that these questions are asked and in many cases these statues will be removed?
I do. I think.
Very much for your time this morning. And Councillor Dan Diaz, Lord Mayor of Cardiff, thank you for your time as well this morning.
Thank you.
23 minutes past 7 is the time. We should tell you about the Duchess of Cambridge, who's urging people to document their lockdown experiences through photography. It's part of a project she's launched with the National Portrait Gallery.
There is 1 week left for people to submit their pictures, and 100 of the very best will feature in an online exhibition on the gallery website. Our royal correspondent, Daniela Relf, has been taking a look at some of the entries so far.
Right, let's look at one of those photos in more detail. Now to Jane Rowe, who took the picture, and also now Rachel and Sophie. Sophie and Rachel, good morning. Glad to see you're awake. And what we must say, actually, is because I was reading the brief, and anyone who thinks, oh, snapping them just while they were having a cheeky nap, this is one of your 2 half-hour breaks in a longer than 12-hour day. So I'm going to start by asking you, how are you both? How are you feeling? How are you doing?
We're all good.
The hospital now, obviously, and you are colleagues. What's work involving at the moment?
So I'm just...
Oh, look, enjoy yourselves. One of you's on shift, one of you's sleeping after the shift. Rachel, Sophie, it's been joyful talking to you, and good luck with the work. And Jane, well done with the picture. It's sparked a conversation. It's a good thing, as you described.
Thank you.
Let's see, time now is exactly 7:30. Let's catch up with the weather for this Thursday morning. Matt's got the details.
You've got a good picture there. You always have good pictures, don't you?
Thanks very much.
7:32 is the time. Good morning to you. You're watching Breakfast with Charlie State and Naga Munchetty.
Main story this morning, former cabinet members are among those calling for the government to relax the 2-metre social distancing rule in England in order to kick-start the economy.
MP
government.
It is coming up to 7:45, and we're going to talk to Mike now because there are things that are happening. You spoke to Steve Bunce earlier, straight-talking, enthusiastic, absolutely clear about how excited he is about this upcoming bout, if and when.
If and when, but he was saying it...
Like when you look at a sport like golf, because it really has seemed... It's got a reputation of being an elitist pastime anyway, and just seeing the almost lack of diversity at the top of the game. It's interesting hearing someone like, Rory McIlroy talk about that and say that we need more visibility. There needs to be much more visibility of different people from different backgrounds represented in that sport.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks very much. See you soon.
Time now, 7:51. It's been just a few weeks since West Midlands Police Chief Superintendent Phil Dolby left hospital following nearly a month in intensive care with coronavirus.
Now, since then, he has been recuperating at home with the help of his family. This week, he began a phased return to work. We're going to talk to Phil in just a moment, catch up with him. First, here's a reminder of his story. So interesting, when someone has actually had the virus and physically experienced such damage, how it hits home in terms of the measures that need to be put in place or that need to be adhered to. Phil Dolby joins us. If you don't mind me asking, more well than the last time we spoke to you. Dan and Louise spoke to you on the programme. How are you feeling? Back to work, how's that been going? That began on the 9th, didn't it?
In terms of policing, in some senses, some people think the police are in quite an unenviable situation at the moment in terms of trying to police how people are behaving. And I just wonder how, given what's happened to you, what you know now about COVID, how it's made you reflect on, what people are doing and how the police can help.
The last time you were on about, and we played the clip about how you really want people to adhere to the measures that have been laid out by the government. Tell me about your everyday life. I know you went to the tip the other day, for example. Tell me what you're seeing as you're getting back outside into normal life or the new norm. Tell me what you're experiencing, how you're feeling about being out and about.
Good thing at this time. Can I just ask, Phil, I'm looking at the music stand behind you. Who's the musician? Good to see you well, and nice to speak to you again. Good luck with as you gradually get back into full-time work. Thanks for chatting to us today.
Thank you very much.
Let's talk to Matt. Let's find out about the weather. There's another kind soul, is our Matthew. Morning.
I try my best. Very good morning.
Good morning. Welcome to Breakfast. You're with Charlie State and Naga Munchetty.
Our headlines today. Good morning. It's Thursday, the 11th of June. Our top story this morning. In the last half an hour, the local government minister, Simon Clarke, has told this programme the 2-metre social distancing rule in England is under review. It follows calls from senior MPs and business leaders for the government to ease the restrictions in order to kickstart the economy.
Let's talk to our political correspondent. To see you again. You were listening to that interview, and there has been a lot of debate, hasn't there, and pressure on the government from within the Conservative Party about this 2-metre rule and whether it should be 2, 1, 1.5, and where we lie in terms of, you know, agreement with other countries. Yes, people are going to be confused about and want some clarity on today, I think, is this bubble, this new bubble where if you're single or a single parent in a household, you can now choose another household to have as your social bubble.
Yes, or...
2 men have been arrested on suspicion of assault on 2 police officers. A statue of Robert Baden-Powell on Poole Quay will be removed today and placed in safe storage. J.K. Rowling has revealed how she experienced domestic abuse and sexual assault in an essay, a piece defending her comments on transgender issues.
It comes after she was accused of transphobia following a series of controversial tweets.
Now, in a blog post, the Harry Potter author said incidents in her past had shaped her opinions on the need to protect girls. We should warn you, Nick Beake's report does contain some flashing images. The Duchess of Cambridge has released a video message urging people to document their lockdown experiences using photography. It's all part of a project she's launched with the National Portrait Gallery. Some really interesting pictures, I imagine, that are going to emerge out of this.
And some of them, in a way, and I don't mean this in a disparaging way, kind of ordinary. It's just like it's like moments in time that in other circumstances wouldn't seem important, but they take on a different kind of importance. Bearing in mind what's going on.
Well, considering the new normal.
We were talking about
that was so... Just sleeping, just napping earlier. It's 10 minutes past 8. Matt's going to have the weather for us around 27 minutes past, and then Mike will have the sport a little later on.
So let's go back to one of the big stories that we're covering at the moment in the wake of the death of George Floyd. The question being asked by many young people is just what might change.
Hundreds of thousands of people have marched in protest. Statues have been torn down or removed. Controversial television programmes and films have been called into question. Well, Breakfast's Graham Satchell has been to speak to a group of teenagers about their hopes for the future. Time now is 23 minutes past 8. NHS England says it's offering innovative and more convenient cancer care during the coronavirus pandemic, despite figures which are going to be released later, which are expected to reveal a decline in the number of urgent referrals in April.
Charities are calling for a national plan to restore services and warn of a ticking time bomb in undiagnosed cases.
We can talk about this more with Deborah James. To you too. Dr Simcock, let's get straight to it with these numbers. What are they likely to, I mean, I'm not asking you to predict the numbers, but what are they likely to indicate in terms of referrals? When I spoke to you, we were talking about just how people weren't going to GPs. Do you remember? And, you know, and they were too scared to go to the GP. They were scared about the whole pandemic. They were scared to go to hospital. What do you think is perhaps driving this drop in urgent referrals and treatment? I mean, you with the podcast, people will be in touch with you all the time, won't they? Have they... And obviously they're talking to you, but have they said, like, they fear they're being left out of the system, or there's, you know, the system is so far behind, perhaps, that they're concerned even more than they were before the diagnosis? Everyone's
aware of the pressure that the NHS has been under because of COVID. But do you think if you like, the messaging has been upfront enough that you can still come forward with what you should have done in the first place? Do you think that should have been said louder and more clearly? Thank you both very much. Deborah, good to see you. Thank you very much, Deborah James. And Dr Richard Simcock, thank you as well.
Let's talk to Matt. Let's find out what's happening with the weather. Oh, those are big raindrops there.
Yeah, big growth.
Thanks, Matt.
It's just after 8:30. Thanks for joining us on Breakfast. You're with Charlie and Naga.
Our main story this morning, former cabinet members are among those calling for the government to relax the 2-metre social distancing rule in England in order to kick-start the economy.
MPs, social distancing, self-isolating, shielding. Those are the things you're hearing, phrases perhaps we'd never heard of. Now it's almost like it's everyday language, isn't it?
As we've been hearing this morning, there's now a new one to add to the list. Let's find out what support bubbles are and who they apply to when they come into force.
Let's talk to our medical correspondent, Fergus Walsh. See you. So there was some talk about these bubbles, and no one really quite knew what a bubble would be. Do we have a clear idea of what a bubble is? And we had a conversation with one of the government, one of the MPs, Conservative MPs today. Who's going to enforce this? I mean, you don't have to register, do you? You don't have to register who is in your bubble, your support bubble. It's just take it on trust, take on the fact that, you know, yes, it's important, especially for those who have been really lonely, and also those with shielding aren't included in this.
On the bubble thing, on a compassionate level, you know, absolutely, many people will say on their own. So loneliness is a real, genuine health risk in itself. But where is the kind of scientific logic of allowing an older person who necessarily is potentially more at risk to go into a household but with children who, as we know, are more likely to be asymptomatic? How is that? How can that fit within everything else we've been told about the risks?
Well,
John from Bridgewater has been in touch, Fergus. You know, we always rely on you to answer these questions as clearly as we can. So take this one on. So John has 6 children, OK? And between them, they have 18 children. So John has 6 children, 18 grandchildren. Got that? OK.
Yes.
Question is, does he have to select just one child over the other 5? If he's to find Angus's question, Fergus. Angus has had to social distance from his partner since the lockdown began. They're both divorced. They both have children who... The children themselves have been splitting time between their respective mum and dads, right? So he asks, can I finally spend some time with my partner at her home? But what he's worried about is you're potentially putting 4 households in a bubble because you've got each of them plus the other partners.
Yeah, they definitely...
I think this is the last one, and you'll breathe a sigh of relief. So Kerry says, does this new rule mean that my mum could look after my daughter while I go to work, or is it just for socialising?
No. Yeah.
Fergus, when you do find out the answers, you're writing them up on the website or figuring out these rules. But they're there and they're there to be abided by. Fergus, always good to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
He earned his money this morning, didn't he?
Certainly did. And as always, thank you to everyone for getting in touch, because each circumstance illustrates, whatever your circumstances, there'll be somebody else somewhere thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
It'll be reflected elsewhere. And every circumstance is different.
Families
but
aren't identical, are they? It's all different. We all have our circumstances. We need to talk about British Gas. There have been some job losses announced, and that's what Sean's focusing on this morning. Sean, another company feeling the pinch.
Yeah, you could look at...
Isn't it? Is that, you know, there was a point that people might have welcomed voluntary redundancy because there were other opportunities. But now you look at retail, you look at the restaurant trade. If you're made redundant, it's not as if there are loads of jobs out there because nothing's open.
No.
Thanks very much. Thanks for bringing us all of that.
Yes, on the theme of change, filming now returned to the set of Coronation Street. A little bit different, though. Coronavirus will be mentioned on the cobbles. The programme makers, though, insist it won't dominate storylines on the soap.
Remaining at a social distance while filming. And that's seen new measures put in place, including a one-way system around the set, stars doing their own makeup. Our entertainment correspondent, Colin Patterson, has been talking to some of the cast and crew.
Interesting seeing just how they're adapting, isn't it?
Yeah, but, you know, things like Coronation Street soap operas, they're such an important part of people's lives, everyday lives. And in these times of uncertainty, you want that regular, you know, friendly, kind of comforting programme. So it's good that it's back on.
Let's see, 8:51 is the time now.
2 years ago, Salisbury became the site of an unprecedented national emergency. You'll remember a former Russian spy, Sergei Skripal, and his wife, Yulia, were poisoned with the nerve agent Novichok.
Well, now in a new 3-part BBC drama, the events are retold through the eyes of those investigating what happened. Let's have a look.
Well, we're joined now by the drama's co-writer, Adam. Morning to you both.
Morning.
Adam, this is a subject that's, you know, a person died. It was dramatic at the time, of course, and, you know, it was the stuff of spy movies and everything, but to do this and trace back through the community and how it responded to the incident, not just the drama of the incident, must have been quite tricky.
Good morning to you. So your character, I think we saw in the clip a moment ago, is Sarah Bailey. So Sarah is the wife of the police officer who people may remember was contaminated, Nick Bailey. Did you know much about the story in advance of getting involved in the production? Play a real-life character, and Sarah Bailey, of course, exists in real life. Well, you've had contact, I understand, as part of this process?
I mean, it's still very recent. It's going to be very fresh in the minds of the people there, of course, the families who are involved as well. And you said that, you know, the people you met were in the community who were talking to you. They were the ones who've driven this story, because it's not just a sequence of events, this series, is it? It is about the wider impact it had on that community. Just how, you know, it's changing the filming practices now. I mean, as an actor, your life's completely different now, isn't it?
What it's about. Annabelle, lovely to speak to you this morning. Adam, thank you very much for your time as well. Good to see you.
The three-part series, it runs consecutively from this Sunday night on BBC One at 9 p.m, also on the BBC iPlayer.
We are back tomorrow at 6.
Have a good day.